Good morning. It's only a couple of days after Mother's Day, and we're running a special Carers Network social housing roundtable today. Really apt when so many people feel the pressure to be carers to their own parents in a world where things are a lot more difficult, and obviously carers are everywhere around us, but we don't necessarily pay enough attention to what they deliver. So I'm really hoping today will be excellent. I'm joined by the brilliant Natalie Quilter from Notting Hill Genesis, who's going to provide some really interesting insight into some work that she's been doing and some really interesting facts around just how many carers might be in your social housing business and what we might need to do to try and help empower them better. Thank you very much. Look forward to enjoying this one. Good morning. Hi, Yasmin. How are you? Oh, still connected to audio. Always say a little bit soon. Hi, Yasmin.
Hey, good morning.
Morning.
My 11 o'clock meeting finished early today, so here I am.
Yay!
I was about to say, it's normally you jump in a couple of minutes in because everyone's meetings run over a bit.
It always happens. Who actually finishes meetings on times these days? I don't actually know anyone. So, and then you want to quickly grab a drink or pop to the toilet before the next meeting.
Yeah, that's right. I feel that there's more meetings now than there was when we were all in the offices, because in offices it was a nightmare finding a room and getting people together. And I just think people have just found this whole Teams thing and Skype is a lot more convenient. You just get a couple of people together. It's easier. There's a lot more meetings. That's what I find.
Yeah.
But then it's also because you can't just kind of quickly solve something in a minute by asking across the room. You have to kind of get people together to have those conversations, don't you? Hi, Marie. Hi, Portia. Hi, Emily. How are you all doing?
Good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, all good. Delighted to have Natalie with me today. As always, I'll give it a couple of minutes before we start everything, because as we just mentioned, everyone's meetings run over. But did you all have nice weekends? Anybody get up to anything particularly exciting?
I went to Cambridge at the weekend. It was lovely, really sunny day, really nice. It was lovely.
I went to Cambridge on the Friday. I went took my friend punting for the first time. And
you went right to the other side. I heard that's really nice as well.
Yeah, it's lovely.
Well, we went to see the mosque because I was really interested. Apparently the architecture is really interesting. And also it's the first eco mosque in Europe, first of its kind. It's really interesting. I met a lady from Austria there. She was here as a tourist, and she's taken the day out just to come and see the mosque because of the architectural value that it has and the fact that it was an eco mosque. It was interesting. It's really nice, really lovely place, very diverse. It's really nice.
Brilliant. Well, look, what we'll do is, I went up to, that's right, Marie, no worries about your mic. You've got the chat function, you know how it works. So what we'll do is I'm going to get Natalie to introduce herself. We are obviously recording these as we always do. I'm expecting a lot of people to be jumping in as we continue through from the LinkedIn event and things that people signed up for. But as ever, if you haven't been to one before, please use the chat function or raise the hand, use the reactions button, however you want to kind of get involved, and I can bring you in at any time. We are, obviously today is a really important topic. I think a couple of days after Mother's Day in particular, when we're looking at carers and how many people are carers and things like that. So on that, I'm going to pass over to Natalie to introduce herself and why I wanted to bring her to the forum today and her background, and then kind of start talking through what we're looking to cover today and how hopefully we can make some real change moving forward. So Natalie, I'll pass over to you.
Perfect. Morning, everyone. Thank you for the lovely introduction, Matt, as well. So my name is Natalie Quilter. I'm the Diversity, Inclusion and Wellbeing Lead at Notting Hill Genesis. But the reason I'm here today is because I'm the chair of the Carers Network in our organisation, and I'm a carer myself for my mum. So what I'm going to do is go through a bit of the background of caring within the UK as it is, a bit about my backstory, and then how we actually set up the Carers Network within our organisation, the impact that it's had as well, some of the key changes that we've made to support carers, and also just how we as a social housing sector can move together looking to support carers and the importance of that as well. So Matt, am I okay to start?
Please start. I'm going to be bringing people in as they come through. I just think it's going to be an excellent topic today. And as ever, if you do want to get involved, please just put something in the chat or raise your hand and feel free to ask Natalie away, because her story is an amazing one.
Okay, perfect. So thank you. So just to give you a bit of a bigger picture of caring within the UK at the moment. So across the UK today, there are 6.5 million people that are carers, and to put that in perspective, that's 1 in 8 adults who care unpaid for family or friends. And within our lifetime, that will actually increase to 9 million. I read an interesting study by Business in the Community and ISPOS UK, who surveyed 5,500 employees across the UK and found that 44% are combining paid work with care, and 36% are responsible for caring for an adult of working age or older. So I myself fall into that bracket. So I'm a carer for my mum who has multiple sclerosis. And for those who don't know that, it affects the brain and the spinal cord. And she it's a lifelong condition that sadly has no cure. And she has been wheelchair bound for about the last 15 years or so. So but despite that, she's also has a number of other mental health matters, so bipolar and schizophrenia. So it's that physical disability along with the mental health conditions as well. So I've been a carer all my life. I can remember cooking dinners for my family since I was 10 years old, and then leading up to the point where I'm having to change my mum and obviously help her in and out of bathrooms and whatnot. And it has been a struggle and a challenge, and you know, I'm not afraid to admit that, but at the end of the day, it's also made me who I am in terms of being very resilient and strong and really appreciating for everything that I have and things that other people may take for granted as well. But interestingly, so within the workplace, before moving here, I actually never said that I was a carer to any of my previous employers. And that is because there is a real stigma around caring still to this day. So whether that be a fear of judgment or whether that's sympathy or potential barriers to progression. But there sometimes comes a point in life when you do need to say to your work that you're a carer. And that happened to me about a year or so after working at Notting Hill Genesis, where my mum suffered a stroke, and the caring and the working came a little bit too much to handle at that point. But one thing that was very supportive, when I finally reached out to my manager, she was extremely supportive. She allowed me to work flexibly in order to help care for my mum and also look after work responsibilities too. So fast forward to 2020, our women's network reached out to everyone in the organisation that was a member of the women's network and said if there was any carers that were willing to share their story as part of a carers campaign. And I look back at my previous experience here a few years back, seeing how supportive my manager was, and said how beneficial it was for me to open up, because when I said that I may need to leave early in this situation or so on and so forth, or I'm unable to come to the office because my mum had a bad fall previously or something, it was a lot more easier. I didn't have to lie to say I was sick or take annual leave or make something up. So I decided to share my story, and this is where the impact and the gap as well really showed. So shared the story on our intranet, and I had hundreds of emails and comments on our intranet just saying I'm a carer myself, or thank you so much for sharing your story, raising awareness. I think people forget about younger carers as well, actually looking after their parents and so on. So raising awareness to that side of things. And within our network, within our organisation, we had 4 established staff networks. So some companies call it employee groups. And this is where Matt, the use of technology, just for the people on the call, I'm interested to know if any of your companies currently have any staff networks or employee groups, whether that's women.
But you see, during the merger,
I think that's right. Whether that's right. Women, LGBTQ+. I'm just really interested in knowing if you already have an established staff network or employee group base. And then I'm going to get Matt to share those answers shortly.
Just a couple of people still to go. So 9, 7, 8. One person left, I think. Maybe haven't picked up on it yet. But so far, 63% is yes and 38% is no. Oh, there we go. 56-44 was how it ended. So actually very close in terms of people saying that they don't have a staff network in place and an employee group, which I'm quite surprised at.
Yeah, that does surprise me, because typically what I've found speaking with different groups and companies is that organizations do have other diversity strands in terms of staff networks, employee groups, and carers is typically the one that doesn't exist, the one that I'm advocating for. But for those that don't have staff networks in place, I would really encourage you to start them, and I can go into a little bit how you can get that starting, and you can contact me anytime after this conversation as well. But one thing that's really important is around data. So this is an area where we were lacking, but it's not just us in the social housing sector. So the National Housing Federation did an ED&I report, and I think it covered 180 housing associations across the UK, and they found that only 1% of workforce data was available in the sector for caring responsibilities. So that was the largest gap identified in the report, alongside socio-economic status. And I think that was a really powerful statistic, showing that we actually don't know our employees, and we actually don't know who actually have caring responsibilities as well. So that's something that I would start off with. And one good place to do that is we recently have done our staff satisfaction survey, but within the diversity characteristics, we actually included caring responsibilities, but not just saying, are you a carer? We broke it down to, are you caring for adults of a certain age? Are you caring for children and adults? Just to give us a real understanding of the makeup of our organisation, and making sure that we're updating our policies, providing the right training and support to all of those groups as well. In terms of how I started the Carers Network in our company, what I did following that article that went up, I liaised with our diversity, inclusion and wellbeing lead at the time, and there was a process about reaching out to our inclusion steering group, and there's lots of groups here. And on that board is one of our executive board members, and I basically presented him the evidence that not only that there's a gap within our organisation, but actually throughout the social housing sector as well. And I also explained my own personal story and the benefit of the support that I received from having that conversation with my manager. So the process took around 2 weeks, and once finalised, the proposal was shared with our entire executive board to confirm the new carers network in place. And most importantly, and something that I'd encourage everyone on the call, if you are looking to start a network, is to make sure that you have sponsorship at a leadership level. And if you can get C-suite, then that's particularly beneficial as well. So Katie Bond, who's our Group Director of Sales and Building Safety, volunteered to become our sponsor. And this really helps with visibility across the organisation. And also, most interestingly as well, she works flexibly in order to care for her children. So she has every Friday off and finishes at 4 p.m. Yet she has demonstrated clearly that even though she's right at the top within our organisation, she can still work flexibly and have that work-life balance, which many people are seeking for at the moment. In terms of actually promotions, something that I found was really beneficial, and this started, so it was actually launched in February 2020, the Carers Network, and little did I know we were about
1 month later.
Yes, exactly, into a national lockdown, and even more of our workforce would become carers as well. So we kicked it off with the lunch and learn, and it was just a space for people to share their stories and experiences. And if you do have carers in your organisation, I think we went through about 3 boxes of tissues at that time, and it was a really cathartic experience, to be honest. Actually, I think what people try to understand, and unless you are a carer, you won't fully understand, but it's around creating that awareness as well.
From that, how many carers did you find were almost like silent carers? How many kind of came through that you didn't even know existed?
So interestingly, that very first sort of lunch and learn, we only had 5 people attend. So it was very, very small. So even though I had all of these emails and whatnot, and I think to me that showed people are very still scared to admit that they're carers. And one thing that we've tried to do is we have a periodical My Life as a Carer stories that go on our intranet, talking about themselves, who they care for, but also how it doesn't change who they are or impact them. And, you know, they can still work and they're doing a fabulous job at it. And I started doing a series of senior leaders that are carers, so directors, heads of, and so on as well. And it was interesting because in the report as well, the business and the community report, which I'll share after, they found that of those 5,500 employees that were surveyed, 4 out of 10 carers said that they were prevented from applying for a job or promotion. And so that was my reason behind trying to encourage to show that there are people at that senior level as well. And then during the pandemic, I set up, and we still have it today, weekly informal catch-up sessions, which is 2 to 3, and people can just either have a break or just chat about any issues that they have. And what we've started to do across the business is actually have external partners come in and talk about their care and responsibilities, or where people can get support, because as well as giving support to your carers, it's also raising awareness to employees that are not carers, so supporting managers on how they can look after carers that may be within their teams, and so on. And one of the most interesting pieces that I led a session on, and I wrote an article on it on LinkedIn as well, it was called Am I a Carer? So the reason behind that was the session basically explored how your culture can and has influenced many into thinking you're not a carer. And that was followed on by a study by Jennifer Parr called Culture, Caregiving and Health. And it focused on those that are Black or from a minority ethnic background. And because of their culture, because it's passed down year to year, you're expected to look after a family member. You don't actually register that you're a carer yourself, and that means there's you're not getting the financial support that you need, or the emotional support as well. And when I did that session internally, 75% of the participants which joined after the Carers Network were from a minority ethnic background, and that was purely because they learned the fact that they are in fact a carer, and since then they've started to receive financial support from the government as well, which is a really, really positive step. And like I mentioned, Matt, earlier, so it started off very, very small with 5 people. And now we have over 80 people within the organisation. They're part of the network. And, you know, we're still relatively new. It's been going around for 2 years, and we haven't been able to have these in-person events. But it was all about that promotion of sharing personal stories. I think that really connects with staff mostly.
But the fact that there were 80 people, when you started 5 people, and I mean, obviously time doesn't always fit, but that's such an exponential growth that people were even kind of willing to go, actually, I am, and that's okay here, is huge.
Exactly that. And that's something in terms of the impact, and this is where I'll wrap it up, so I'll stop talking in a moment. But we've been able to make some really key changes within the organisation. So we updated our flexible working policy to make sure that it's inclusive of carers. And linking back to that report, that was something that's really important, because they said that 44% said that that would really help with childcare responsibilities, and 54% said having an updated flexible working policy, or even offering it, it would 54% said it would help for caring for adults as well. And something that we've done, and I'd really encourage everyone here, I spoke at the Housing Quality Network as well recently, is that I'm sure you all have diversity, inclusion impact assessments or equality impact assessments. And at the moment, they cover the 9 protected characteristics. But what we've done is actually add on carers as well. So when a new policy, a new programme or project is implemented, we can see how that may adversely affect carers within the organisation. And there are various policies that have been tweaked or updated because of that. Something as well that we've done to promote it externally as well is update our website to say that we're a carer-friendly organisation, and also sign up to something which is fabulous called Harry's Pledge, I know that it's been shared by them, this roundtable as well, but that's something that I'll share within the group as well. If being in the social housing sector, it's something that we can all make a key difference in, and that's looking at everything from making sure that the homes that we build as providers are adaptable, and people within wheelchairs and so on are able to use the facilities, but also how you're supporting your employees that are carers. Are you giving them those career development opportunities? Are you offering that flexible working as well? And some interesting work that I've just completed as well was with the National Housing Federation. So I was having this chat again around carers networks, and they said that was a gap that they were missing within their ED&I case studies. So I've written a case study for them, which should be published in the next 2 weeks, and then I can share it around with this group, and then you can see all of the information on there to see how you can look to set it up in your own company as well. But I think in terms of moving forward, within the social housing sector itself, it's a shame that carers haven't been recognised so far, but I think, you know, they are really coming to the forefront now with obviously COVID-19, the pandemic. A lot of your staff would have become carers that weren't previously, and I think us as a sector, if we look to encourage carers networks, if we look to become more flexible organisations, we're helping to tackle that stigma that's still in place. But also, more importantly, we're also being representative of the communities that we serve as well. There will be a lot of residents as well that are carers, and showing to them that you have a workforce that is happy and proud to say that they're carers. I think that connection with our communities that we serve will go forward as well. So that's it from me. So thank you very much for my long talk.
Thank you. And I think there's a lot there
for
people to kind of process. I'm sure we're going to get some questions and things come through in a moment. Emily Jackson has put the link for Harry's Pledge on the chat, and I'll make sure that obviously gets sent round. But just before I ask a couple, has anyone got any kind of questions or discussion points they want to bring up with Natalie from what she's obviously just shared there?
I'll say I am from Notting Hill Genesis. Someone put that in the chat.
Go on, Carolyn. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that's fantastic what you're doing, Natalie, because it's so important to recognise carers. And I know that because I used to run a carers project for Thurrock Mind in Essex for 2 years. It was a project that I was running there. And the impact on for carers is huge. And as you say, a lot of people don't recognise their role as a carer and don't reach out for support. And they are more prone to social isolation, issues with employment, having to take reduced time, time off, not being able to concentrate properly on work potentially because you've got maybe a parent with dementia and you've got a camera and you're worried what the carers are doing behind your back and all that kind of stuff. And, it's hard to get your children in the right school because there isn't any availability and nobody recognises neurodiversity and all of these sorts of things. Huge amount of paperwork often to struggle through, and emotional just some are an emotional wreck. Stats show that carers do have actually a reduced life expectancy sometimes as well, and often more elderly carers really struggle with their own health and put that on the back burner for the person that they're looking after. So it's hugely important. I've just been scrolling through my work website actually to see what we've got on there, and I know we're kind of linked with Purple Tuesday, which is a disability charity, and we've spoken about Harry's Pledge at work quite a lot, but not a huge amount of emphasis on carers because mostly people recognise that they are the fit and able one, and so they should be nose to the grindstone, I suppose. But I've just sent a message to our ED&I guy actually to ask him the question. So it's all happening here, hot off the press.
Yeah, I love that, starting the conversation already. And I think something that you mentioned there, and I mentioned it briefly, was it's really important for managers to know how to support carers within their organisation. And once you do open something that we had, I think it was also people just not assuming. So for instance, if someone is typically a very good worker, and then one day they're on their phone quite a lot. Not saying get off your phone, all of this. It's, is there an issue? What's going on? And typically it's because there's something going on at home. You need to rearrange for another carer. You need to get different support in. And it's about making managers mindful of there's more to life than work, as it were.
I think that goes across all of the 9 characteristics in the same way. I remember I used to have a member of staff on my team with mental health issues, and the thing was, oh, just let her have time off when she needs it. And that was kind of it. And I was like going, I need training on this. I need to know how to best support, because they were very good at what they did, but they were clearly, the way we were working wasn't supporting her in the best way. And I love the fact, and I mean, it's been mentioned in the and Sharon Murphy's mentioned it herself there, that she really likes the idea of including carers as part of the protected groups for EIAs, and definitely something they're going to work on introducing, because it isn't talked about enough. And I know when you introduced this topic to me first, Natalie, that was the thing that stuck out to me, was I didn't even realise this wasn't done. As someone who works obviously on the outside and supports housing associations, I hadn't realised how big an issue it was in the first place. And when you say you have 5 people going to 80 in 2 years through a pandemic, I think that says an awful lot.
And interestingly, in our staff survey that we did, where we actually collected the data on how many people are carers within the organisation, we still actually have a long way to go. We polled, and it is actually around 300 people that have said that they've got caring responsibilities.
Wow.
And there was a lot of people that also said prefer not to say, so you're not sure how many obviously percentage are in there. But then that shows to me as well that what more can we do? You know, we've obviously started off in a really positive place, but what more can we do to help break down those barriers and make people feel comfortable? Because I've had people that have come up to me in this company and said, I'd love to join, but I don't want to, in fear of being outed. And you never even think of that in the context of carers as well. And I've been able to work with them and explain to them how we support, and it's a private space. Unlike our other networks that we have in place, anyone can join if you're an ally or obviously identify within that specific group. But for the carers network is actually slightly different. So if you do want to join, you actually have to just send a brief bio on who you care for and whatnot. And the reason being is that once you are in that network, it is really a private and safe space, and you know that you are only speaking to other carers within the organisation, and there is no fear of being judged and so on and so forth.
Yeah, Carolyn, please do.
Yeah, I'd just like to say, I mean, different types of situation challenges for people as well. You know, for example, I set up some training with the Alzheimer's Society for people that were caring for people with dementia or dementia related, you know, issues. And the training was free. The Alzheimer's Society did it over 4 weeks, you know, a morning a week for 4 weeks. And then we set up a peer support group with that group of people, because they all had the same kind of linked challenges. A lot were women. A lot were women that were facing issues with their partner being more violent and more aggressive, and that really helped them to talk to other women about the stuff that we don't talk about, like sex and, you know, and things with incontinence and stuff like that. It was really, really good for them, and they formed a group, and we supported them ongoing, and we also included carers for people who have drug and alcohol, a reliance on drugs or alcohol. And that again was a group that were really, really isolated and felt that they couldn't reach out because there was a stigma around them being the people to blame because that was their children or their partner, you know, and you know, what was family life like if their kids taking cocaine every night, or you know, she's an alcoholic now, what have you been doing to her? So there was a huge amount of stigma around that particular set of people. So I think sometimes you might find, I don't know if you're doing this already, but certain groups kind of gravitate towards each other, and you can set up specialist things just for them.
Sorry, Caroline.
Yeah, and there's an organisation based in Earls Colne that do training like autism awareness training and dementia awareness training, where you actually physically can sense it yourself. So you know, that's one to have a look for. I got some funding for that. And you go on this kind of like place, and you have stuff happen to you, and you can really, you feel you're in the moment as well. So it's really enlightening for carers to have that experience.
I think that's really positive to hear that you are running those training sessions and awareness sessions, and you're no.
This was when I worked for a carers
previously.
project.
Okay,
Previously. It was funded by Thurrock Council. If I had the chance to do it now, I would leap at it, honestly,
and
because it's so rewarding.
It really is. And we last year we done dementia awareness workshop, and interestingly there were obviously lots of members from the Carers Network joined, and I was on the call as well, but there were lots of people across the organisation that aren't part of the Carers Network. And you know, if I can't, you know, if they may not choose to join for whatever personal reason it may be, but knowing that you as an organisation are providing training and support on how they can better look after their loved ones, you know, and they can actually take that away, that's so impactful to that individual as well. So well done for doing that. And something that we're looking to improve across sort of this year is intersectionality, so working with different networks as well. And something that we've got coming up is working with our health and disability network. We're going to be doing an event around autism, and someone in our company has autism, so they'll be doing a talk. And then one of our carers, she has an autistic child, and they're going to be running a session talking about autism from the perspective of someone that has it, but also someone that cares for it as well. And it's having that intersectional approach as well, which I think is the way forward.
It's really interesting you've just mentioned that, because we just heard that from Yasmin. I'm going to read a couple of bits out on the chat to bring into. Maria said it's a brilliant initiative, so well done, and couldn't agree more. Obviously why I wanted to bring you on today. But Portia, this is really informative, as I have worked with carers who have accessed mental health services due to not having support or recognition they're a carer. And I do want to fly back to that in a moment, because I thought it was really important what you mentioned there about certain communities not realizing that actually carer is what they are, and the support and recognition. And I think it ties in probably with what Yasmin mentioned there as well, which is, she said you're very inspiring, and her daughters were young carers for their autistic brother, and she's very concerned about the lack of options for working parents when they are caring for a young person with a disability. I think a lot of that is tying in with what you mentioned there about intersectionality.
And I mean, going back to just Portia's comment as well, and to be completely honest, you know, I've obviously come on here and, you know, I'm in a very good place, but I've personally gone through mental health struggles as well. I had a very dark patch, and it was with a previous employer, and depression, anxiety, and because it does become too much sometimes. And I think that's also the realization of the importance of needing to speak to other people and actually being able to have that support around you, because it is a very lonely and isolating space. And especially being a young carer as well, you've got very different lives to your friends at that period in time as well. But I was very lucky to have a counsellor, and I had CBT therapy, and that's also something that we're trying to advocate as well within the organisation, is trying to speak more openly around mental health, breaking down that stigma. But also, one of the members actually said, I think you just mentioned it, Matt, that they went to a PTA session, and it was talking about children suffering with mental health issues at the moment. So we're going to be running a time to talk session of caring for someone with mental health, like in terms of with their children, and it's just opening up that conversation. And I think, like here, you know, whether one person has joined or whether 50 people have joined, starting the conversation is where it needs to happen and begin anyway as well.
Absolutely is. I mean, just coming back to a couple of those moments there, in terms of when you were speaking about communities not realising they were carers, and obviously it touches a bit on what Yasmin's mentioned there about the lack of options for working parents when they are caring. how did those conversations start, and what kind of support was there that people didn't even realise was available to them?
Mhm. So within the organisation, it actually came out, we had something called Stop the Clock conference happen, and it actually happened following the murder of George Floyd. So we had this session where we learned about everyone stopped working for a day, and on this day we learned about Black history, Black culture, and it was a really inspiring day. And then someone came to me and said that, would you run a session around caring and culture? And this is where the conversation was brought up. So it was quite organic in that sense. And I myself just did a lot of personal research into this. And that's where I found that there's a member who's Indian, and she said that going down sort of like family generations, they're always expected to look after parents and so on and so forth. And she was like, I didn't even think that I was a carer, even though she's every night when she finishes work, she's going home, making sure that dinner's prepared, making sure XYZ happens. And it's about teaching people really, and making people understand what it is to be a carer, because I think, and sometimes people forget as well, if you're looking after a friend with a disability, illness, or if they're elderly, and it needs to be some sort of immediate family member in order to make you a carer, when that's not the case. Now, that being said, in terms of the level of support you can get, it can differ, but we've partnered with, they're called the Carers Network as well, but it's an external partner, and they cover Hammersmith and Fulham, Westminster, and another West London borough as well. And what they've done, they actually came in and did a free workshop for carers, saying, we can help you write care plans. We can see whether you're getting all the right financial support. And this is a free service, and something that we're now promoting to our residents as well. Are you a carer in one of these boroughs? You can use this company, and I can share it here. And I think it's about tapping into these free services that are available, because there is a lot around for both our residents and our staff as well.
I think sometimes that's where the issues fall down. And I mean, we've had these on the round tables before about having so many services out there that can support and can help, but they don't have a voice to even kind of know what's going on. I mean, I know I've got Nisha with us today, who's kind of bottom right of my screen at the minute, but her fostering network and everything they've talked about, and the support and advice that comes there. And I think that's one of the interesting things, and one of the things I love doing about these roundtables is just people finding out about tools and services they didn't even know existed in the first place. Mm-hmm. And people are hearing about Harry's Pledge, but again, I think it's something that's still trying to kind of build up more and more with its own voice about what it actually delivers and the support that it does give. In terms of any other questions kind of coming through for Natalie at this stage, is anybody, Yasmin, I know obviously you mentioned there a little bit about your point earlier. Do you want to elaborate on that a little bit in terms of how that's then had an effect on, I guess, not just on obviously your children caring, but yourself as somebody who's linked to that carers network, even though it's not you're directly doing the care yourself? We've got you on mute. Roy got you on mute. always wants at least a meeting. There we are. Cheers, Yasmin.
When can you ever have a meeting without starting to talk while you're on mute? Can't happen. Natalie, I think you're absolutely amazing. Seeing you here today kind of gives me hope that in a few years' time, I hope my daughters are going to be speaking the way that you're speaking about their experiences. I think that they went through some really, really difficult phases. I'm not going to romanticize and and say, oh my God, they were just so amazing and it was all glory. It wasn't. They had some really, really hard times. Sadly, their brother was incontinent until he was about 8-9 years old. I don't mind talking about the taboo things. I know that there are a lot of taboo things. I myself personally at the moment, me and my sisters, my brother, we're actually carers to our mum at the moment. So but we're really, really lucky. There's a lot of us. Are you all sitting down? Because I'm just about to tell you how many of us there are. So we're 7 sisters and 1 brother. So we've got like a rota where we all kind of we go around, and we don't want to leave mum on her own. She's had a few really, really traumatic episodes where her sugar level went so low and the ambulance had to come, and it takes her about 2 days to get over that, because it's quite traumatizing when the ambulance come and then they put her on a drip. And so we don't leave her on her own. We make sure that she's constantly eating. She's in the early stages of dementia as well. I want to kind of elaborate a little bit more on the point that I have struggled, like being a working parent and have an autistic son. It has been really, really difficult. Like I remember once I got really, really upset. I'm very passionate about my job. I love what I do. I've been in the social housing sector for about 15 years. I got bypassed on a conference. I know it's not a big deal now, but it was to me at the time. Oh, we didn't ask you because we weren't sure, you know, because then you have to make arrangements for your son. They all knew my son was autistic because, like I said, very open about it. Employers everywhere I've worked have been really, really understanding. However, on that one occasion, I did feel really, really upset. It wasn't, I'm not saying it was like it wasn't even like it was going to be like a game changer for me or anything, but it was a project that I'd been quite heavily involved in. And that conference, you know, it would have, on a professional level, it would have really enhanced me. And I should have at least been asked. But they didn't even ask me, they just overlooked me. And it's only when I challenged them, and that was the excuse that I got given. But I'm not accepting that as an excuse. My son's name is Garsim. He's an absolutely amazing young boy. He's so independent. He's probably the tidiest teenager that you will ever get to meet in your life. He's a really, really amazing boy. I think through caring, especially listening to you, Natalie, it has moved me a little bit. You're probably around the same ages as what my daughters are now. My daughters are like mid-20s and late 20s now. And like, they've just grown up now. I'm really proud of them. They've become people who are really, really aware of difference. And as a mom, I couldn't ask for more than that. But I give a lot of the credit to my son. I think he's somebody, I think he totally re-educated me. I had to learn a lot about autism. I had a lot of hard times. Sadly, there were times when my husband wasn't so understanding. He wasn't prepared to accept it at first. He wasn't prepared to embrace it. My mum still thinks that I haven't done enough. That does upset me. She thinks that I was too busy working and, you know, building my career. I took 8 years out because I wanted to look after my children. I had my son like kind of when I was 35. He was absolutely, what's the word, normal. I don't really like using that word, but we didn't know that he was autistic. The autistic traits like started to come out around when he was around 4 or 5 years old. There's things that I'm doing on a voluntary basis that I never would have done. I know you're talking about carer networks like in workplaces. I belong to a community where a lot of women still don't work. They're still, it's expected of them to care for their in-laws. And sometimes I think it really adds a mental burden onto them. Like there's no appreciation for them. You're expected to do it. You're the daughter-in-law of this family. And why are you not doing this? And I really feel for this person that came to you, Natalie, which is why I think it's so important that we do have these forums. I used to work for Genesis before it became Notting Hill Genesis. And I managed to, I'm actually really happy that I was able to do this. I managed to set up like a little network amongst a few of us, and then it became like a little carers network where people can just like kind of just talk about how they're coping with their working day. Like you're getting phone calls from the school, and you know, I've been lucky, like I said, apart from odd occasions where the employers haven't been so understanding, but on the whole, I've been really, really lucky with employers supporting me. But I think it's really important that, you know, talk about things and like just reach out. I've been able to reach out to a lot of women that don't actually understand English. Sadly, a lot of the information that's available on websites, etc., is in English. English is not their first language. I've joined a group which is all the way in Leicester. I didn't want to join at first because a lot of it is about like their local events, but I'm glad I have. Some of those women have managed to pick the phone up to me. I mean, I'm not saying I helped them and I did anything life-changing, but the fact that they could talk to somebody and ask some of the questions that were kind of like, you know, niggling at the back of their mind.
It makes a difference.
It does. It really does make a difference. Like what you said, Natalie, like, you know, this Asian woman, it's just expected of them. That's so true. It's not just one case, you know. Like we've had a few dilemmas when we first discovered that, you know, my mum's going to need full-time care. Everybody kind of wanted to push my sister-in-law in there. And I said, well, no. I said, it's not only her responsibility to do it. I go, why can't we break out of this? We've all been brought up like in a different way. Not what burden doesn't lie on one person. It's our mum, she's our elder. And another thing is that I just want to say, if anybody's working in care and support here, please can you push this opinion forward? The lack of diversity when they're matching carers to people, I think that needs to be revisited. I think it's so important. We get a carer coming to my mum's house. I've been working from home there a couple of times. It would just like, if I weren't there, it would just be nice if my mum could just talk to her, because it's lonely as well when you're old. There's times when we're not there and the carer comes in, they don't speak the same language even. So I just would really like to put that out there. If you could, that's something we
it's
need
a
to
really,
change.
really important point. Thank you. I completely agree.
And there was a lot of very good points that you raised there, Yasmin, and I wanted to pick up on a few things, and thank you for sharing your story as well. Was that something that we found, like you said, you've got an autistic son. One thing that's really positive from having a carers network or employee support group in place is that there are a number of carers that also have autistic children, and they've been able to speak separately about, because one person was struggling to get their son into a school and didn't know where to go, and these people were able to have separate conversations. So not only is it a space where you can share experiences, you're actually getting real life help and support and actually tangible things that you can take forward. But something, and what I was really happy to hear as well, when you said your son's name and you're proud as well, and that's what we're trying to do with these articles that we promote on our intranet, is that yes, there are challenges, yes, there are struggles, but we're proud to be a carer, and we're proud of those that we look after and care for as well. And it really does make us such a big impact. But unfortunately, like you said, in terms of being bypassed for that conference, that's why many people are scared to share that they're carers, because what are people thinking, and will they think, how will they think it will be impacted? So it's about us, as a community here, as the social housing sector, is how do we start to make that difference and make people realize that actually there's more to life than caring. These people,
I think me being a parent of an autistic child has allowed me to help a lot more people in this sector than I would have done if I didn't have Qasim.
Yeah,
like I said,
But
Qasim,
equally, I think Yasmin, part of that is because you've been willing to speak up about it. And again, if you didn't have as strong a voice as you do, then actually you'd have been hoping that somebody else did, so you could get their support. And I think that's a huge testament to yourself. And I know you've been on a number of these with me, and it's always great whenever you can come along and be able to share that. Is so empowering to so many people who need to hear it. I'm a little bit conscious on time. We've got a couple of people I want to bring in. So Portia, can you come in, please? And then I'll jump to Carolyn.
Oh, hi.
Sorry if I'm pronouncing your name wrong. I do apologise.
No, it's Portia, definitely. It's Portia. I feel really privileged to be sort of part of this round table because I do work and have worked in mental health, and I've been instrumental in discharging carers from acute mental health beds early because there was nobody else to care for the person at home. And it's just really like, I feel a sense of kind of responsibility now because I didn't have an understanding of caring, and that carer's mental health or well-being was not at the forefront of our care. The forefront of our care was a discharge plan that, hang on a minute, there's somebody at home that needs caring. It's going to take a lot more money, a lot more services to care for that person. So it's better to discharge the carer home early, get the home treatment team to go and see them with absolutely no recognition in terms of what they're going through and the impact that caring has had with them. So I think, being here today in this round table will teach me to kind of do things a lot more differently. I love, Natalie, the fact that, you've got policies in place, because as well as a manager and having people work underneath me, I've come across people that are carers constantly on their phone and not having that understanding. So I think it's really imperative that every organisation has some sort of policy around carers, because most people are taking sick leave when it's not really sick leave. And compassionate leave is only limited to your immediate family, mum, dad, brother, sister, mum, dad, son, daughter. So yeah, really, I would definitely support what you're doing, Natalie, to drive it forward.
And Portia, I thought I was getting a bit emotional there actually with the start around mental health, because as carers, when you're looking after someone, you kind of you don't put yourself first, you put them first, and you forget about your own mental health, and you think that if I start talking about I've got these issues or whatnot, then what will people think? Am I being selfish? And that led to my own mental health struggles as well. So the fact that you're saying that you're going to look at things differently, and even though it might cost more money, because ultimately when you're a carer, if you're not 100% ready and willing, the person you're caring for is going to it's not going to benefit them either. So to make sure that the carers are happy, their well-being and mental health are in a good positive place, that will only benefit the people they're looking after. And just around sort of the management side of things as well, around policies and things, again, I can't advocate for that more. And as I'm talking there, I've completely forgotten my next point, so I'll go to Carolyn. I'm so sorry, Portia, but
That's all right.
it's because you made me emotional. That's why my head's going all over the place now.
But I think it's that managerial training, it's that understanding, and it's that I'm with you, Portia. When I had somebody who came into my team, as I mentioned, who needed support and help, I didn't know the best way to support. I kind of was going, all right, well, let's just see how we get on. We were only small, we didn't have a HR team. And it was exactly that you've said there, going, I don't know what's best to do here, but I'll manage them as I would anybody else, because that's fair. And actually it isn't fair, because you're letting people stumble and fall. Marie's put there, so true. You need to look after yourself first before you can look after others. Fantastic point.
And that's something that I've really tried to advocate to the members of the Carers Network. I've shared a lot of self-care tips as well, and how to look after and support yourself before looking after those that you care for as well. So
you have to give yourself time in everything you do. Carolyn, please come in.
I was just going to pick up on, I think, the point before the point, because there's been so much really good stuff come out here. But I think, first of all, young carers, absolutely fabulous. How they step up to the plate and how they become really wonderful people, really wonderful humans. And so there is kind of a silver lining in the clouds sort of thing from that perspective, although it's truly hard. It does make you a different person when you've been in that situation, and it gives you a lot more depth and emotional intelligence and all of those bits and pieces. So you are, it makes you more complete, I think, if you had those experiences. I think it's really important that managers have an awareness and that they can be empathetic, and that they don't have to follow the rule book rigidly, that they can be sensible enough to be flexible. I think being a carer, you always have to be one step ahead of the curve, because you never know what's going to come at you. So you're always trying to second guess, you're always trying to think ahead of what might, or what could, or what if, what if I'm not well, what if somebody doesn't turn up, and all of that sort of thing. You have to be so good at planning, so good at project management, and all of those things that, it is as well an addition for a member of staff to have all of those skills. So you should be promoting and supporting these people, because they bring in more to the table than most people. Yeah, so it's bang the drum, I think, and well done, Natalie. I think it's absolutely fantastic, and lovely stories, and sharing from everyone here. It's amazing stuff. Well done, Matt, for bringing it all together.
It's my part's easy. I'll be honest with you. I've worked in the sector for so long, and I think one of the key things that I've always found is that when you work with recruiters who work in housing, the biggest frustrations are either people don't understand. Recruiters don't understand social housing, or it's all about, when I worked for agencies, it was, oh, well, it's fine, you can run these, but what's the return on investment? When are you getting the money in? How many of these businesses are you working with, etc., etc.? And yet I've got a network of 12,000 people on LinkedIn. Why don't I reach out and just see if we can bring topics together that can make change? And that's the whole point when I'm discussing it with anybody. Is I'm happy putting a topic together on anything affecting the sector, as long as it's something that can affect change. Because, everyone who works in it knows there are some bits that are broken, and knows there are some areas that need highlighting. When I first spoke with Natalie, as I said earlier, I didn't know this was even a big issue in housing. I didn't realise how many carers there were. And yet when I spoke with Natalie the first time, your passion around it, but also your insight into it and the work you've done with the National Housing Federation, etc., it needs to be heard. And on that, I know you had a couple of points you wanted to wrap up before we brought things to a close today.
And I remembered my earlier points. I'm just going to quickly get that in there as well.
Do.
And it was the secondary point that Portia had brought up as well. But something that we're looking at as a network, and also with our executive board leader, is a lot of carers have to take time out for medical appointments, so taking their loved ones to the hospital or doctors, and they can be quite frequent depending on the illness as well, or condition. So that's something that we're looking to discuss. Things have been thrown around in terms of formalizing, you know, if you just take 2 hours out of here, you can then make it up throughout the week, and, you know, being flexible around that. So that's something that we're discussing and we'll be looking to put in policy as well. But I think that goes back to my point of making sure that you try and have some sort of senior leadership support as well, because whilst, you know, as a group, it's really important to share experiences and have that mutual support. So really in that change, you need that senior leader to go to the board and say, this is what we need to do, this is what we need to update as well. And I think just my closing remarks, even though I had a really good, I said it to Matt before we all joined, I'm like, this is what I'm going to end with, completely gone out of my head, but it's along the lines of just, you know, as a social housing sector, there are some industries that are doing some great work in terms of caring. I went to a session recently, and I think it was led by Thames Water. They're looking to improve carers and family working within that remit. But I think for us as a social housing sector, if we can be at the forefront of how we should really be treating our employees and carers as well, it can make such a difference. And why don't we be the blueprint for other industries as well moving forward? Because we're different to other industries as well in terms of we're actually emulating the communities that we serve as well, and representation is such a big thing, and being carers, it's not visible, so let's shouting about it and having that externally is going to be so impactful, important. But I just want to say thank you so much for everyone sharing their stories, their personal stories. I mean, Portia already made me cry almost. So it's been a really impactful roundtable, and thank you again, Matt, for bringing this all together.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you, everybody, for echoing Natalie there, for your insight, for your sharing. Thank you, Natalie, for sharing everything that you were talking about today. I know a couple of people have asked if there's any kind of policies we can share, so I'll talk to you about that afterwards and see if there's anything we can circulate. And obviously, you know, I really look forward to the next one. It's interesting that today has been on this, because next week I've got Malkit Sagu, who used to be with Midland Heart, Director of Assets, and instead went off and did some senior education. I can't recall off the top of my head if it was master's or doctorate. I think it's a doctorate, but I'm not 1,000,000% on flexible working and social housing and what that looks like and what that needs to be. And so he wanted to come on as someone who's just finished this huge thesis and going, actually, there's a lot more to flexible working than going, right, well, can I finish an hour early or start an hour late? And what that looks like, because as you've mentioned there, so actually at the end, if you can allow people to go, actually, I can take 2 hours off to take someone to a doctor's appointment and know that I'm not going to get reprimanded for it, and I don't have to take sick leave, and it isn't going to affect my permanent record. If I'm going to move on and ask for a reference, it isn't going to be there 100 hours of sick leave. Because that was one of my concerns with my old member of staff, was that when she moved on, you know, it was the reference went out and said, oh yeah, took however many days sick. I'm like, yes, but it's mental health support. Are we doing enough to make sure that was covered off? And to be able to do that for the Carers Network would be amazing. But everyone, thank you so much. Thank you for joining today. I'll get a video put around with a brief wrap up, and the recording will go live, and I'll make sure you've got those. As ever, you can get access to the link on the Social Housing Roundtable LinkedIn group. I don't just put it everywhere because I don't want there's some very personal stuff that not everyone needs to see. But thank you again for being so open and honest, and I look forward to seeing you all at the next event. Thank you.
Have a great day, everyone.
See you, everyone.